I always like to create my own. And so I usually come out with the IDIoT tip sheet.
Uh-huh. There's a David in there, isn't there?
So it just depends. But yeah, you can have the IoT or the IDIoT, or as we call it in IT, is the ID10T tip sheet.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Mi nombre es Nalia, con Georgia Spine en Orthopedics en Tucker, y estás escuchando Ayúdame con HIPAA.
Thank you for that intro, and welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name's David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT. Joining me is Donna Grindle, somewhere in the world, but not at home, from Carton.
Well, this week I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's beautiful, looking at palm trees blowing in the wind.
Now, is that from one of the hurricanes?
More relaxed. No, just a gentle breeze.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good deal.
I feel very relaxed already. And I got another week in Florida.
So is this a vacation, a workcation? What is it?
I needed a change of scenery.
Oh, okay. So it's a workcation.
I just needed. This week, I'm going to try to take a little bit more days off next week. So we'll see.
Okay, cool. So
awesome.
Would you say that you're rested up, or would you say that you're a little more tired?
No, I'm about the same. So,
there's been no benefit yet.
Well, there is a benefit. I'm more relaxed.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Carly appreciates that. May not do me any good, but Carly appreciates it.
There you go.
Anything to calm you down some. All right, in today's episode.
You gotta do what you gotta do, buddy.
I know. So today we're going to go over a couple things. Now, of course, last week we started the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month Week 1 information. So this week we're going to go over the Week 2 information. But we also have more information coming out from OCR because, dude, they are hammering it.
I know. It's like they've already matched last year's number of resolutions with what they've done now, but that's like 7 in September.
I know. So it's, I'm starting to wonder if they hold on to these things and then like chunk them all out there in the last part of the year. But one of the big ones we talked about.
COVID.
Oh, yeah. That's true. But one that we talked about when it actually happened was the Athens orthopedic breach incident. So
we've been talking about that since it made the news.
Yeah, so we were on top of it when it happened. We've mentioned it a lot over the couple of years or so since it happened, and finally there is a settlement. So
a resolution agreement.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I wonder if this is is this the first one we've been able to follow from start to finish?
Maybe. I don't know. I can't remember.
But anyway, we're going to get into the details of that, and we'll walk through the Athens orthopedic incident a little bit just to catch people up who may have forgotten it or don't know about it, and then we'll go into the settlement. And then, of course, as I said before, we'll cover the cybersecurity stuff for this week as well. The number of medical practices that think they're HIPAA compliant is pretty staggering. Effective privacy and security are an ongoing process, not a checklist. And that's why at Carton, they don't just assess your situation and leave you with a report, but they work with you all along the way. Call Carton today at 678-292-5001 or visit them on the web at cartonhq.com. Aren't your patients worth it?
Are you frustrated with your current IT provider? Are you sure you're getting the security and protection you need? Are you putting your patients and your practice at risk? If you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, give Security First IT a call to learn more about how they can protect your patients, your practice, and your bottom line. Find them online at securityfirstit.com or call 980-288 5100.
All right, we're back. So in this week's segment of HIPAA,
Say what?
I always love that.
It's a new toy. Yeah, we have to.
So this is we're going to kind of push this off until we start talking about the Athens orthopedic settlement, because that's where the whole say what thing comes
where we
in.
learn what HIPAA say. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to do it. We're going to push it to that conversation. So we're going to dive into the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, Week 2, which is securing devices at home and work.
Yes. And somebody pointed out that the Cybersecurity Alliance is now calling it Cybersecurity Awareness Month, not National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. But if you go to the CISA site, it's National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we can call it either one.
Oh, so it's either
I know.
NCSAM or CSAM.
Mm-hmm. Whichever one we want.
Well, I'm a fan of simplicity, so I will drop the first letter.
NCSAM. Okay. The whole point of our little production here is to prepare you for next week. So if you're listening on Friday, these are the things for next week to be aware of. Beginning on October 12th, it is week 2. And it comes into the importance of securing things at home as well as at work. So the point that they put into the champion guide for this week, I read through it. This is the part that got my attention that I think would be helpful to maybe base what you're saying on or what you're doing. Our homes are more connected than ever. Our businesses are more connected than ever. With more people now working from home, these two internet-connected environments are colliding on a scale we've never seen before, introducing a whole new set of potential vulnerabilities that users must be conscious of. So that's really the whole point they're trying to get across, and to teach people these things. And if you go to all of the sites that you should have access to, because now you've become a champion, and then some of it, if you just go looking for it, you can find it. But there's some great stuff out there. CISA has the telework guidance, an entire page of different guidance tips for teleworking, like policies and requirements and those kind of things.
Right.
They also have,
Yeah, I agree.
Oh.
We have the links in our show notes as well, so keep you from having to Google it.
Oh, yeah. That's the intent, is all the things we're talking about. You can just go to the show notes and click there.
Right.
They also offer an IoT tip sheet, which is a good one because it can be helpful this week. Mm-hmm. And then on week 3, we're doing connected devices in healthcare, so it would be helpful again. So you get a twofer if you start using that. Yeah. 5 steps to protecting your digital home tip sheet from CISA. I believe everyone should have one.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, what we put out, there's the IoT tip sheet. I always like to create my own, and so I usually come out with the ID IoT tip sheet.
There's a David in there, isn't there?
So it just depends. But yeah, you can have the IoT or the ID IoT, or as we call it in IT, is the ID10T tip sheet. So either one.
Yeah.
But
there you go.
So some of you are laughing hysterically, and some of you are going, hold on a minute, let me get a pen.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's David in there. So I highly recommend you go get those, share them out in your organization, even if you just print them and put them on the back of the stalls in the bathroom. I think that is a great place for people to learn.
Yeah, you can cover all the places.
Audience.
You can cover all the places that say, call so-and-so.
Oh, geez. On the National Cybersecurity Alliance site, you can sign up for the Gone Fishing Tournament 2020. And it's pretty cool. They'll send you a fishing test to your team. It's kind of a unique opportunity because they're going to use the same template for everybody that signs up. And that'll allow them to provide your click rate as well as how you compare to the others that participate in this, because everything will be the same. And you set up the users that you want to do. So you go sign up. They send you some hey, we're going to contact you to get your usernames, and then you complete your usernames, and there you go. They send it out, and they give you the ability to compare based on size of organization and some other things. But good news, you don't have to pay for this one, and it's completely separate from everything they're used to seeing and gives you a chance to do comparison. In today's world, you can never test fishing too much.
This is true.
They also have several very interesting webinars, Mr. Sims. I think I might even check some of these out. The October 13th, 1 p.m. Central Time, tips to avoid today's cyber threats. It's pretty straightforward, and just encourage people to sign up and watch it. And, they always give you the link after the fact, and you could use this in several different ways in your organization on the same day at the same time, because it's, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to say they're the same time. Smart devices need smart security, securing your business in an Internet of Everything world. That one sounds really good from a business perspective. The next day, October 14th at 1 p.m., 5 reasons why software security is more critical than ever. All of you folks that are involved in some level of development, no matter what it is, or you want to be able to ask questions of your software company, your software vendors, check this out. Find the 5 reasons and say, how are you handling these? Yeah. The next day, October 15th, this one seems really, it's kind of interesting. It's Cybersecurity in a Flash, Virtual Small Business Cybersecurity Summit. So it's a 3-hour event, 1 hour opening, and then that next hour, they have 12 5-minute presentations, 1 slide each.
That's interesting.
I know.
I just want to see how that plays out.
I know, right? So the idea is that there's technical concepts to describe those to non-technical audience in that amount of time.
Well,
it's going to be fun to just go and see what happens.
This is a perfect example, though, of how training does not have to be a big to-do. They're showing you how to take a subject in 5 minutes and 1 slide and get your point across. This is exactly what we talk about all the time, about taking your training sessions and make them a 5-minute session. 5 minute, 1 slide, 1 point, that's it. And then do that all the time instead of once a year training.
Yeah, I'm with you, boo. So you explain the concepts that are, at least you could take whatever they're doing here in cybersecurity and expand it to include privacy concepts, other business policies, and always have something, but ours come first because we gave you the idea.
Absolutely.
But between those webinars, the tip sheets I gave you, your champion flyers and social media information, there's some other stuff in the tools we already gave you. You've got a lot to go with. The educational stuff, out there it's for everyone. It is not just for work. It is not just for healthcare. It's for everyone. It's the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
So that means everybody got to do it.
There you have it. Yeah. So week 2, securing devices at home and work.
Yeah. Yeah, and
there you go.
We've talked about this before. It's worth mentioning again. But if your people understand that this is a culture of how they need to treat technology, it's not a work thing. It's not something they, I'm going to work now. I got to be cyber aware. But at home, I'm all right. Make it to where they understand that they have to be safe all the time. They don't get into work vehicles and now say, oh, now I've got to be safer than I am in my personal vehicle. Well, maybe they do, honestly. But
maybe. But you're right. That's the ultimate idea here, is to make it be something you're always doing. And people have to, I sat in on virtual Secure World yesterday, and there were some great sessions that they were so good, in fact, that I was going to just do a couple, and I ended up doing practically everything I could get to as the whole time. But they made the point, frequently, everyone has to get used to owning their own data, that they have to understand the value in it and be able to protect it and accept that it's their responsibility. So we've got to get that out there.
Yeah.
So that's next week, week 2, go forth and prosper.
Yep. You have your marching orders. Go make it happen.
All right. So now we're skipping back to the HIPAA.
HIPAA say what? So let's make it. Here we go. HIPAA.
Say what?
Yeah, I had to be prepared to push the button.
I know, right? And there's no way I can signal him and he would get that. But we would have to come up with our own little military.
Just throw your moose ears up.
Moose ears, there you go. Okay, HIPAA pasta mousse. The settlement with Athens Orthopedic, I was actually having lunch with my team Monday when, boom, that kind of pops up in my list, and we were all like, whoa. So we reviewed it together a little bit at lunch, and most of the things in there, pretty much knew it. But over the long haul, there were a few things. Let's just say, this is close enough to home for me that there's stuff you always hear, right? But we're going to just go through what is publicly available information. And you and I know whenever we're reading the settlements, we do a little read between the lines. We're not going to go with what rumors may be or things that I've heard from people who know any of that stuff, publicly available information. But it is literally right down the road from where we are. Mm-hmm. It is one of the ones that I kept saying, I know one is coming. I know it's got to be close. There's a couple others that have to be close that I wouldn't be surprised if we see. Yep. Here is the case, though, and it's where we learned about the Dark Overlord.
Yes. He still hasn't called me for an interview either. Don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, I think they may have caught him because we hadn't heard anything in a while. But
that's true. He did disappear, didn't he?
It's a collective. I think it's a collective, but back then it was just kind of this weird new concept. These were really the first ones to hit the news. Later they became, I'm sorry, but when they were attacking businesses, that's one thing, but they went and held school systems in fear by telling them there was an attack on their children. Mm-hmm, yeah. Then at that point, I'm like, these guys got to be caught and never near a computer again. Mm-hmm. And maybe never near people again. But anyway, I kept watching for this one, and when it came out, the big statement in the press release, normally we just focus on Severino's quote, but I think the paragraph leading into the quote was as telling as the quote normally is. So I didn't want us to miss that. So I'll do the paragraph. You can do your statement.
I can do the Roger. Now, I'm not going to do the Roger statement that we talked about before we hit record.
No, don't do that one.
I might allude to it, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Every part of me wants to say, if I see you anywhere again.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay. The term AF comes to mind. OCR's investigation discovered longstanding systematic noncompliance with the HIPAA privacy and security rules, Athens Orthopedic, including failures to conduct a risk analysis, implement risk management and audit controls, maintain HIPAA policies and procedures, secure business associate agreements with multiple business associates, and provide HIPAA privacy rule training to workforce members.
Yeah.
That's pretty clear.
It might have been easier just to say what they were doing, right?
I know, right? So then we have the director's quote.
Mm-hmm. So Roger.
Yes.
So Severino says, hacking is the number one source of large healthcare data breaches. Healthcare providers that fail to follow the HIPAA security rule make their patients' health data a tempting target for hackers.
So hacking's a problem, and if you're following the HIPAA requirements, then you really shouldn't have the same level problem that Athens Orthopedic had.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just heard from Noonan, we just talked about that interview, and that phrase of long-standing systemic noncompliance is what they're going after in enforcement. And this did go back to 2016. And I do recall back then having, you sit in a lot of doctors' meetings and stuff when you do what we do, and having a doctor say, when we were discussing their options, and said, well, you can do it this way or you can do it this way. And I'll never forget, the guy just slides back from the head of the table and he goes, I don't know about you guys, but I do not want to be Athens Orthopedic. I say we do it this way. And everybody in the room was like, I think you're right. But we always said that. And that was like a discussion that we still have, is until it happens in your back door, you don't really pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
You assume it happens to other people.
Right.
And this will bring it back up in, at least in Northeast Georgia, if not all of Georgia. And it's close enough over there in Athens, it could get some attention in South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
But we did post the links to it so you can see what the press release is, and the resolution has its stuff in it. But basically, we can go all the way back where, and I remember we were entertained by the behavior that was reported from the whole thing. But, and that was before they became vile. And, it seemed more playful almost at that point. I love the fact, I think that's where we first learned about you can trust us, we're honest criminals. But the whole issue started in June 2016. They say a journalist, but we know it was databreaches.net. That's who notified them.
Mm-hmm.
And that their database with patient records may have been posted online for sale.
Mm-hmm.
That's June 26, 2016. On June 28th, a hacker contacted them, demanded money in return for the complete copy of the database it stole.
Yeah.
That is a moment where breathing stops, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Athens Orthopedic subsequently determined that the hacker used a vendor's credentials. Let me reiterate, a vendor got them in this trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear that? A vendor got them in this trouble. And it wasn't just them. There were other orthopedic groups that used this SRS tool. And you saw it on the screen. But the hacker, here's where things go awry. Because they knew they got the vendor's credentials to access their EMR and exfiltrate patient data.
Right.
But, so that's June, the hacker continued to access PHI for over a month. until July 16th, 2016.
Wow.
On July 29th, Athens Ortho filed a breach report informing OCR that 208,557 individuals were affected by this breach, and it had all of the PHI, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that things went horribly awry, and in the resolution agreement, it kind of summarizes it in a very similar way. It does say in the resolution agreement, it actually comes out with the name, a hacker group known as the Dark Overlord, which it doesn't mention in the press release.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. And, I think a lot of the problem, that continued intrusion was not effectively blocked until July 16th. I'm not quite sure. This gets back to having an incident response plan, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, I don't know why it took that long, but I can imagine that part of it at least was, oh, crap, how do we handle this? And you got to gather the people together, and you have meetings and all this. And this stuff takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the incident response that you should have had in place, the playbook that you should have had so you know what you're doing, is now being developed on the fly during an incident, which is not when you want to do this.
So you go down some rabbit holes that you shouldn't even go down, and I'm sure that impacted it some. It could have also been impacted by them trying to do the threat hunting and trying to find them, but it's not clear. The bottom line, though, is they didn't block the hacker from getting to PHI. Yeah. Even if they were trying to do some threat hunting, they could have done that.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point that people should understand, is that if you have an incident, and depending on who you call, they may not stop the problem from happening right away. They may leave that there so they can do threat hunting and stuff like that. So just be aware of that, because if you hire somebody and an hour later they haven't closed the door, so to speak, don't freak out. That's normal. You're okay.
But you don't want it to be a week later, and certainly not a month later.
Right. Yeah, there should definitely be a plan of action, but you can't just say, well, we're gonna keep them in there until we figure it out.
Yeah. No. But anyway, as we know, a breach over 500 brings in the OCR investigation. And I can assure you this investigation was a very serious one, because this made the news. It was huge news.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the ones that we use for an example about how not to respond to a data breach, because on top of that, then they told their patients, we'll go out of business if we give all of you identity theft. And patients were rightfully outraged, and there's a lot that went on behind the scenes, let me just say.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody's trying to put a stake in the ground and move forward now. In the investigation, this is the list, and I love how they always say in these settlement documents, potential violations, because you're not admitting that you did it when you do the settlement. You never admit that you do these things. You admit that might be a problem, and we're going to do the things to fix it. And the list is pretty comprehensive. The requirement to prevent unauthorized access to EPHI, yes. Until August 2016, the requirement to maintain copies of their HIPAA policies and procedures. So they apparently they couldn't find them. I don't know. But August 2016 is when they said, let's get some policies and procedures in place.
Yeah. Where's your ones before that? Oh man, we just threw those away. We just threw them away.
Yeah. We're just not going to go there. September 30th, 2015, so almost a year before this happened, to December 15th, 2016, so 6 months roughly after it happened, the requirement to implement sufficient hardware, software, and or procedural mechanisms that record and examine activity in information systems that contain or use EPHI.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Got to be able to see.
They didn't have logs. I don't know what the deal was there.
Yeah.
Until August 7th, 2017, so over a year later. Clearly, this was found during the investigation. The requirement to enter into business associate agreements with 3 of its business associates. And the 3 you would think would be at the top of the list because Quest Records LLC, more than likely, medical records company, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would know you need a BAA. That would be important. Total Technology Solutions, I'm going to assume, is an IT provider.
I don't know. Let me look it up.
Okay. And then SRS Software LLC. SRS Software was the EHR because that was on the screenshots that they put on the ads on the darknet to sell it. So those 3, which are 3 very important ones, did not have a business associate agreement in place at the time of the attack and didn't until over a year later have one either. That was a big problem, I am sure.
Mm-hmm.
Until January 15th, 2018, so almost 2 years later, the requirement to provide its entire workforce with HIPAA training. My bet is we'll just call it leadership that may not have participated well in the training.
Mm-hmm.
The requirement to conduct an accurate and thorough assessment of the potential risk and vulnerabilities to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of EPHI held by AOC, and the requirement to implement security measures sufficient to reduce risk and vulnerabilities to a reasonable and appropriate level. Those are the things they found. So basically, a HIPAA security program wasn't in place.
Well, it all starts with that risk assessment or risk analysis.
Mm-hmm.
It starts there. And when you don't have
do that wrong, everything else.
Exactly. That is where you start. And that's, I mentioned before we started recording today that, I'm waiting on Severino to come out and go, the next time I have to tell somebody to do a flipping risk analysis, I'm going to blow my lid. Because every single one of these.
He said that more eloquently this time.
Yeah, I did. But every single settlement we see that, and I'm just waiting on them to start making that one of those deal breakers. Like we're tired of saying this over and over. You can't have the rest of it unless you have this. It's step 1, and you're not even doing step 1. Man,
that's what he said. Is we can't change HIPAA. We can't even get him to do step 1 right here.
Yeah,
we can't make it more strict.
People are
even
like,
though it needs to be.
Can you change step 8? We can't get to step 8. We're still on step 1. But I did do a Google search of Total Technology Solutions, and it looks like they are an MSP in the Georgia area. So yeah, shouted enough. And when you go to their website and you look at it says our team. Let's see. It looks like it's only showing one dude. So I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if
they got a guy.
Yeah. Well,
we'll let that be.
It may be that they just don't have pictures of it. Well, I don't know. But and again, I would think that after this happened, you may have made some changes. So they've had a few years to. But they do say that they do specialize in healthcare and all this other stuff. So, but anyway, it goes back to what we preach all the time, which is vetting your vendors, making sure your MSP understands what they should be doing. Because if the MSP intimately understands their requirements, they would have been pushing you to get a BAA in place.
Mm-hmm. They wouldn't have been trying to do, So we'll see what happens further down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And they agree to the $1.5 million payment and then a 2-year cap. And I thought it again goes back to the first thing they say is you got to get your business associate agreements in order. That is the first requirement. And people are like, why are we starting on business associate agreements?
Yeah.
Because you will never stop doing business associate agreements. It's an ongoing thing to track them all down. That is a long process. But they get 60 days from this week and 60 days of the effective date. And then annually following the effective date, they shall review all relationships with vendors and third-party service providers to identify business associates. And again, this is one where we get a lot of pushback of, we want to see your entire vendor list. And they're like, well, we'll just tell you who the business associates are.
Yeah.
No, that's not the way you do it.
Let me give you a little hint on handling business associate agreements with a new vendor. Start with the BAA. Don't start with the agreement that you're going to sign with them, because
what you're going to buy.
How many times, well, for at least for us, how many times might we have went down the whole path of signing all the terms of service agreements and all that, only to find out the BAA ain't going to fly. And so you've wasted all this time with that vendor. Just start with the BAA.
Yeah.
And
everybody's gotten into that. It's just paperwork mode still.
Right. Yeah. Start there. If you can get the BAA in place and everybody agrees on it, okay, now move on to the next stuff. Because the rest of the stuff is really formality. The BAA is not a formality. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So an accounting of their business associates then must be supplied to include the name of the business associate, description of services provided, the date service began, description of the handling of or interaction with PHI, and then include copies of the appropriate business associate agreement that you maintain with each business associate. That's why we do it the way we do it, right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're giving you the steps now. Those are the steps. That's how you go through and audit your business associate agreements. Then they go into a risk analysis and management section in the list of the CAP. And it's, of course, you shall conduct and complete an accurate, thorough, enterprise-wide analysis of security risks and vulnerabilities. That's what you're supposed to do. But just in case you don't know, they're going to add in there that incorporates all electronic equipment, data systems, programs, and applications controlled, administered, owned, or shared by AOC or its affiliates that are owned, controlled, or managed by AOC that contain, store, transmit, or receive AOC EPHI.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
And they must develop a complete inventory of all electronic equipment, data systems, off-site data storage facilities, and applications that contain or store EPHI, which will then be incorporated into its risk analysis.
Right. And all this is not new. This is the same requirements that HIPAA already talks about. So
they're going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you have they have the standard approval loop that we see, you know, you're going to show us this and we're going to tell you if it's okay. And then we're going to show you this and we're going to tell you if it's okay. That kind of loop.
Mm-hmm.
And once that's done, then they have 60 calendar days from that approval of that risk analysis to then publish what their risk management plan will be to deal with what they found in the risk analysis. And they're very specific. The plan shall, not should, shall include a process and timeline for implementation, evaluation, and revision. Then you go into the approval loop, and then they make another point. AOC shall annually conduct an accurate and thorough assessment of the potential risk vulnerabilities to the CIA of EPHI held by AOC, affiliates that are owned, controlled, or managed by AOC, and this is added, and its engaged business associates and document the security measures implemented or is implementing to sufficiently reduce identified risk and vulnerabilities to a reasonable and appropriate level.
So wait a minute. You mean annually they have to conduct an assessment of their business associates?
Yeah, annually. You should ask them questions. Annually. Annually. It's not once in a while. It's, a guess that many people are going to argue that they need to only do that. I don't know. I've seen people say, every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, or we do it when we first go into a contract agreement with them, and that's it. We're done. So you can have a business associate who may be doing everything great day one of your agreement, then by day 90 or 120 or whatever you want to put on it.
Yeah.
They went sideways. Maybe they changed ownership. Maybe they've changed their business model. Maybe they had a breach. Who knows? But all these things could happen.
Well, yeah. The people that were in charge left the company. The people that were making sure this happened are the ones that left the company, and they're no longer with us.
Mm-hmm.
And now no one took their job.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not a change in ownership or even the C-suite. It could be a middle management person that was making sure things were happening, and that person's gone. And so now things aren't happening.
Or they retired and no one made sure that they got the information from them. And now they're gone. Bye. And then no one knows where they kept the information. I've had that before. We know that they were running the program. We know that they were documenting it. Well, you know what? One of the things your program is supposed to have is how you're going to manage documentation. And then we get to the policies and procedures section. Now, they do make a point in saying, when they talk about the risk analysis, that if you make changes to the policies and procedures, you can reflect that in your documentation about all the policy and procedure work you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind.
Yeah.
And this one has a specific list, and it's not just, when we were reading the ones with the patient access, and they were like, you have to have a policy for patient access, you have to have this, you have to have that, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like a couple of ones. This one's a lot different. They shall include, but not limited to, the minimum content set forth in this list. And additionally, in light of OCR's investigation, particular revision is required to AOC's policies and procedures relating to.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big list. So we're going to go through it fast. Technical access controls for any and all network, server equipment, and systems to prevent impermissible access and disclosure. Technical access controls and restrictions for all software applications that contain EPHI to ensure authorized access is limited to the minimum amount necessary. Technical mechanisms to create access and activity logs, as well as administrative procedures to routinely review logs for suspicious events and respond appropriately.
Or you can use something like Sphere that will do that for you.
Well, yeah, that would do your EHR, and you should make sure that your IT folks at least have something checking logs on Windows.
Yeah.
Or whatever thing you use.
Yeah.
Then we get to, this is one of David's favorites, termination of user accounts when necessary and appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Not 6 months later when you see the IT guy and go, oh, by the way.
Appropriate
appropriate configuration of user accounts to comply with the minimum necessary rule, required and routine password changes, password strength and safeguarding policies, addressing and documenting security incidents. Oh, yeah, we did mention that a minute ago. Conducting routine, accurate, and thorough risk analysis and implementing corresponding security measures to sufficiently reduce identified risk and vulnerabilities to a reasonable appropriate level, workforce training, documentation of workforce training, identification of business associates, engaging in a compliant business associate agreement, and breach notification content requirements.
Again, sounds like the entire HIPAA program.
Yeah, these are the specific ones that they were worried about. But we've gone into so many groups still, and this back 2016, I'm not shocked by that list.
No.
Sometimes we'll see them that they give us, it's a fairly large organization like these guys are, and their security policies, 3 pages.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. 3 pages and a handful of forms that no one's ever used.
If you're like me, the only time you're shocked is if they have what they're supposed to have.
Yeah, I get excited though when I find those. I'm like, yes.
I'm like, wait a minute, something's wrong.
Did you just make these? Do you have a revision history?
Yeah, I know. You knew I was coming.
Then they have a specific section on what the policies and procedures related to business associate and business associate agreements are. So they're doing a deep dive on where they mention all of these, and then they go into specifics on BAs. Designate one or more individuals who are responsible for ensuring that AOC enters into a business associate agreement with each of its business associates as defined by the HIPAA rules prior to AOC disclosing protected health information to the business associate. You don't get to it later.
Mm-hmm.
It's prior. There's a reason.
Start with it.
Create a process for assessing AOC's current and future business relationships to determine whether each relationship is with a business associate as the term defined under HIPAA, and requires you to enter into it. That whole how to handle business associate flow chart we go through at the boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like it's exactly what we created. Create a process for negotiating and entering into BAAs with BAs prior to disclosing PHI.
Mm-hmm.
Create a standard template business associate agreement. People will say, I'll just sign whatever they give me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to have one.
Yeah. I still get the question of who are we supposed to use? I still get that all the time. And, the answer to that is it doesn't matter whose you use, just have one in place. But you're typically going to see a lean one way or the other. Like, for example, if I provide one, it's probably going to lean in my favor. If you provide one, it's probably going to lean in your favor. And that's why we want to talk about these things in the beginning, because some of these things people have handed me, they don't just lean in their favor, dude. They fall slap in their favor. Like, ain't no way I'm signing that. I had one presented to me not long ago, and it came from a template that they didn't create. They purchased. I won't say who it was that made it easy. But anyway, so they give me this template, and the template says, you shall be responsible for the cost of any breach we have, basically. And I'm like, oh, heck no.
I saw one like that too. No.
No, not today, not any day. And then, I had to explain to them why that was not going to fly, because they were like, wait a minute, everybody else signs it. We've got all these other vendors that sign it. I'm like, sorry, they didn't read it.
That's it. They don't read them.
Yeah, I'm not signing this.
That is a big problem. They don't read them. And we know this.
Yeah.
So have your standard, because that's the point for your negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
And when people always ask me, what do you look for? And I'm sure you get the same thing. What do you look for? And I'm like, depends on who I'm representing.
Yeah.
If it's upstream, it's one thing. If it's downstream, it's another thing. If it's the initial covered entity, it's another thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I usually give me yours and I'll just use yours as a template. Like, no.
Well, at least it'll be the way I want it. So
yeah.
And then create a process for maintaining documentation of the business associate agreement for at least 6 years beyond the date of when the relationship is terminated.
Mm-hmm.
Limit disclosures of PHI to business associates to the minimum necessary amount that is reasonable and necessary for the business associate to perform their duties.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. That's a normal process, right? That we would expect people to have, but they're laying it out. I love when we get to say, see, I was right.
Yeah.
But, then they go through on policies and procedures, that normal process, we have to approve them and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
you get 60 days, 30 days, 30, 60, loop, loop, loop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then they get to a part that comes next. And I thought it was interesting that this was then added. After what we just went through, it's almost like it's reiterated that it should be all, not just what we listed.
Mm-hmm.
Do not check the box. Because then it says policies and procedures shall include measures to address the following privacy and security provisions. And then it's like basically privacy, security, breach notification. It's everything in there. So
Yeah.
privacy provisions shall include measures to address uses and disclosures, minimum necessary, disclosures to business associates, training, using safeguards to protect PHI. A lot of people say, well, that just says I'm doing the security rule. And protecting paper.
Mm-hmm.
Changes to policies and procedures. Those are the 6 items that should be handled. Then there's the security rule provisions, and these are really very general. You should have the administrative, physical, and technical safeguards covered.
It's almost like you want to go, huh?
Yeah. So you're saying I should do HIPAA? Are you saying that I should follow the HIPAA rules?
Yeah. So
And then under what?
I'm shaking my head because when it's that general, it's almost like there was nothing to even be specific about.
Well, they were very specific before, but in case that's all you think you need to do, we're going to point out you need to do everything.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why they're doing that, but they're doing it. Because it even includes breach notification rule, notification to individuals, notification to the media, and notification to the secretary.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where you don't want them to say, well, you didn't specifically mention XYZ. So they're going to say, well, we did specifically mention ABC, but just in case we missed it, just do everything else because you're supposed to be doing it anyway.
Right.
It's already documented.
I'm not quite sure. I know this one was a tough one. I know that this one, remember, went to the Georgia Supreme Court even. Some stuff involved with this. And there was a lot that went on behind the scenes, we'll just say. And not being intimately involved just around the edges, hearing what you hear, it is pretty much exactly what I expected to see. I'm not shocked by it. I am a little surprised with the specificities. Boom, got in my word today.
All righty.
We got systemic, we got specificity. What else can we get in there?
Specificity?
Propagate.
Or specificity?
Specificity. Now we got it all messed up. I think we're done.
I think we threw the C and F backwards or something. I don't know. But anyway.
I don't know. I do better when I'm not thinking about it. But it's clear that if you've got questions about what needs to be done, or if you've got people saying that's not what needs to be done, pull this out. Just the risk analysis, description should tell you don't run a scan and answer a few questions and I've actually heard people say it takes 3 hours to do a risk analysis.
What? I wish.
It takes 3 hours to do a risk analysis if you're checking the box and cruising for a bruising. As David was like, at some point, if you don't do.
Yeah. I have to tell you one more flipping time. But, oh my gosh. And the thing about it is, and I know most people don't pay attention to this like we do, but for this to show up, for the risk assessment to show up on every single settlement, it should tell you that it's not that everybody's not doing it, it's that they're not doing it properly. So what is properly? Apparently what you consider to be the proper one is not. It's not sufficing. And so why is that? Well, we're telling you what that is every single flipping week on Friday. We're telling you. It's not check the box. Stop doing the check the box. It blows up in your face every single time. And we're going to start seeing it coming from the MSP and the IT community too. It's already coming. We know that. We know they're under investigation. We're just waiting for the settlements to happen. And so these vendors that are out there pushing the check the box compliance for the MSPs, at some point, that bridge is going to burn slap down. And we're going to sit there and say, we've been telling you since 2015 not to do that. Don't take that route.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
Yeah. And we know, I mean, when we go in and we're doing our assessments, we always say, look, the first time in, we're going to look at privacy, security, and breach notification. We're going to look at everything. We start with gathering data. We need an inventory of your devices. We need an inventory of the software you use. We need an inventory of where your data flows. We need to know how PHI is used and moves through your organization. These are all things that people are like, well, I've never had to do this before. Kind of like they want to not participate in the risk analysis. They want us to go in and know all the applications they use.
Mm-hmm.
We should just know who uses it, how they use it, where they use it. And there's no scan that's going to come up, especially now with everybody working from home, that's going to show me all the systems that are touching that network.
Yeah. But
not going to happen.
The funny part about it is, okay, let's take the argument of I've never had to do this before. How many things in your life are you doing today that you can look back 6 months ago and say, I've never had to do that before? I mean, come on.
Things change, people. Things change.
You know, in order to protect you, you have to do things differently now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that ring a bell with anybody? I want to bang my head against the wall sometime, I swear.
That's a good way to put it right there. Is it ringing a bell? Anybody?
Anybody feel this? It's not
the
just
environment becomes more dangerous.
I do just have to shake my head sometimes. Maybe I'm going to change the name of the podcast to Shake My Head with HIPAA. Anyway.
Well, we've managed to get through this one, and it has not been easy, people. You have no idea.
Yeah, I'm just saying you should be thankful that Boyan is a great editor of the podcast.
Yes.
So, because you will never know the pains we went through. Anyway.
That'll be great. Great stuff. Good stuff.
Yep. All right. That is our show for today, folks. Thank you for listening. And make sure you share this out on social media and tell your friends about it. And tell your loved ones, too. If you care, you'll tell them. For Donna and myself, remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It is always about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.